Thank you for purchasing 5 days access to this instructional video on how to start a Bequests program for your nonprofit. You're free to play it as often as you like during your subscription window. Your purchase includes access to several related printable documents. They'll be sent to the email address you provide when you purchase the video. Working with some prospective donors, when you reach the conversation about how their gift might best be made, you'll discover the best, maybe the only, available gift plan is a testamentary gift. This is when you need to be prepared to discuss bequests in all their variations. And that means you better have your bequests program up and running. I'm happy to provide this checklist for the things you ought to do in order to design, implement, and manage a successful bequests program for your nonprofit. If this is your first effort to promote and seek deferred gifts of any kind, testamentary gifts or life income gifts, it's valuable to recognize that 85% of all deferred gifts are simple bequests. That invites an important pause to define bequest. A bequest, whether charitable or not, is the act of giving or leaving something. As I'll address shortly, there are several ways through which a donor may make a charitable bequest to your nonprofit. Here's a pertinent statistic from the National Association of Charitable Gift Planning's May 5, 2020 issue of Perspectives. Legacy gifts are almost always the largest gifts donors will make. One review of 10 years of IRS data found that a typical bequest averages nearly 3 times a person's total lifetime charitable giving. Legacy gifts also have the highest return on investment, costing as little as 11 cents on the dollar according to another study. You can build a more robust gift planning program on the foundation of a bequests program. Unless you have the resources to dive into the deep end, starting with a simple bequests program is a smart choice. You might even conclude over time that it's all you need. There are 2 phases to building a bequests program: preparation and execution. We'll start with the steps you need to take to set up your bequests program to prepare for activation. The very first step in creating a gift planning program that includes anything other than gifts of cash and maybe securities is to draft your nonprofit's gift acceptance policies. I'm talking about a document that details what types of gifts will be accepted and under what circumstances, how they'll be acknowledged and valued for various purposes, whether and how they'll be liquidated, and finally how they'll be put to use in support of your mission. It's vital to have this in-house rulebook to refer to among staff and your volunteer leadership, and to cite as needed with your possible donors. Your policies should address such issues as the review process you'll follow as you consider whether to accept or decline an offered gift. Specific to revocable deferred gifts like bequests, you'll want to articulate how both bequest expectancies and realized bequests will be valued for each of several purposes. For further detail, see the attached article on the 5 definitions of gift valuation. You want to state what documentation you'll require for each type of bequest as proof that the gift commitment has actually been made. Your policies should address whether your nonprofit will act as executor of a donor's estate. A blanket prohibition on this is advisable, by the way. You want to state where unrestricted bequests will be designated. For example, all to your current operating budget, split by either a dollar amount or a percentage between endowment and your current budget, or all to endowment. For further details, see the attached sample for references as you draft or update your own gift acceptance policies. Unless your nonprofit has an in-house gift planning office, you'll want to identify those allied professionals whose expertise you can call on as you need them. You'll want access to experts in estate law and tax law. That might mean adding one or several names to your contacts list, professionals you can call on when you need them. You might consider creating one or more slots on your governing board or your development committee for such experts, encouraging them to provide their services free or at a reduced rate as part of their volunteer service. Another important preparatory step is to design your stewardship program specific to donors of deferred gifts, including gifts via bequest. This step isn't necessarily sequential, but it should be completed before you start discussing bequests with possible donors. You want to be ready to describe how bequest donors will be thanked, how their future gifts will be recognized today. Here's a to-do checklist to be incorporated into your gift acceptance policies. 1. Articulate your criteria for recognition eligibility. Will a verbal claim that you're in someone's will be acceptable? If you require proof, what specific documentation will you want to see in order to recognize that donor? 2. Name your stewardship program. You can create a society or a club that those who meet your stated eligibility criteria are invited to join. Such names often include words like legacy or heritage. You might base your name on a significant date, like the founding of your nonprofit, or name it for some person with great significance in your history, say your founder. 3. You want to decide what recognition you'll offer, what donor benefits. You might give bequest donors some memento in gratitude for their gifts, something they can display at home or in their offices. I encourage you to create opportunities for those donors to come together to meet other donors through the group. This can be as simple as an annual social event exclusively for those who've qualified through their bequests. Recognition in your periodic donor listings might be printed under a separate heading in a separate section. There are plenty of good examples you can refer to by looking at what other nonprofits do to acknowledge their bequest donors. Another preliminary step is to learn the details of how charitable gifts via bequest can be made. You'll want to learn this from two perspectives. First is the pertinent legal and technical perspective. You want a basic understanding of how bequests are documented so they can be legally enforced, and of tax law relative to charitable bequests. Second is a conversational perspective. Since the vast majority of your future bequest donors won't be lawyers, accountants, or financial advisors, you want to be able to explain bequests to them in language that is emotionally appealing and intellectually accessible to them. I'm going to briefly review the 5 basic ways through which a donor may make a charitable gift via bequest, and give you access to some detail to help you better understand steps you should take to consider each in your gift acceptance policies and how you might introduce each to your possible donors. A donor may make a bequest in his or her will by naming your nonprofit beneficiary of a life insurance policy, by naming your nonprofit beneficiary of a qualified retirement plan, by naming your nonprofit recipient of a transfer on death or payable on death instruction to a bank or other financial institution, or by naming your nonprofit beneficiary of a donor-advised fund. Each of these meets our definition of a bequest, the act of giving or leaving something. Let's start with the most common sort of bequest. The majority of all charitable bequests are made through donors' wills. This is the bequest method most familiar to those who are charitably inclined. Many don't think at all beyond it, even though there are legal costs to add a bequest provision to an existing will. In addition to inviting possible donors to consider adding bequests to their wills, there's value in asking if such a provision already exists and the donor hasn't previously told you about it. You'll want to familiarize yourself with the 3 basic types of will bequest: a specific bequest, a residual bequest, and a contingent bequest, so you're able to discuss them intelligently with your donors. In your gift acceptance policies, you'll want to decide whether to acknowledge the donor of a contingent bequest. You'll want to draft suggested language your donor's attorney can use when adding a codicil to that donor's will to make the charitable bequest. For further details, see the attached article, What You Should Know About Wills and Revocable Trusts. The first thing to address regarding gifts of life insurance is when to say no. Not every life insurance policy is created equally, and not every policy will benefit your nonprofit. In your gift acceptance policies, you'll want to decide what types of life insurance you'll recognize as charitable bequests. Term policies and variable life insurance may never mature. The intended gifts may not be received. Whole life insurance is a much safer bet. As long as premium payments are made to keep the policy in force, the future gift is safe. The gift of an existing life insurance policy is a simple bequest to complete. The owner of the policy, your donor, completes a change of beneficiary form, naming your nonprofit beneficiary of all or part of the policy when it's distributed at the death of the insured individual. The cost to make this gift is minimal, at most a few minutes to fill out the form and a stamp to mail it. For further details, see the attached article, What You Should Know About Life Insurance. A donor may name your nonprofit beneficiary of a qualified deferred compensation plan, such as an individual retirement account, a 401k plan, a 403b plan, or some other retirement plan owned by that donor. This is another simple bequest to complete. The owner of the plan, your donor, completes a change of beneficiary form, naming your nonprofit beneficiary of all or part of the plan when it's distributed as part of the donor's estate. The cost is again minimal, a few minutes to fill out the form and a stamp to mail it. For further details, see the attached article, What You Should Know About Qualified Retirement Plans. By establishing a transfer on death, TOD, or payable on death, POD provision, a donor can transfer assets without the expense of a will or a trust. A transfer on death is generally used for investable assets such as securities, bonds, and mutual funds. Your donor simply notifies the manager at his or her financial institution and completes the necessary forms. A payable on death provision is used for savings accounts, money market accounts, and certificates of deposit. Your donor simply notifies the manager at his or her financial institution and completes the necessary forms. Through either a TOD or POD arrangement, your donor can bypass the delays and costs associated with probate. A donor may use a donor-advised fund, a DAF, to establish a charitable bequest. When establishing a DAF, the far-sighted donor may include final disposition instructions to direct any balance left in the DAF at the donor's death to your nonprofit. This requires you to get in front of your donor before the DAF is established, since such instructions are impermissible once the gift into the DAF has been completed. You could announce in marketing your bequests program. If you're thinking of establishing a donor-advised fund, think of us. Then explain to those who respond that a donor may only state instructions for final disposition of the DAF when the fund is created. Invite a conversation about including your nonprofit in those instructions. For further details, see the attached article, What You Should Know About Donor-Advised Funds. The point of creating a bequests program is to secure gifts by bequest. You want to focus your efforts to make them both time and cost effective. Let's address how to execute, implement, and manage your bequests program. We'll start with how to effectively market and promote your bequests program. You want to do this with your desired audience in mind. You want to decide who you want to talk with about bequests and create a plan to make all this actionable, not just academic. In addition to your primary goal of securing more gifts via bequest, you want a good return on your investment of time and expenses. You want to pick the most effective ways to communicate with your identified audience. Let's take a look at the 3 communication channels available to you. in person, in print, and electronic. You can effectively inform and educate possible bequest donors face-to-face using a group dynamic. First, though, consider whether small group gatherings fit your nonprofit's personality. Especially if you can identify someone who has already made a bequest gift, ask that person to host a dinner or a reception for a small group of invited guests whose names you can provide from your constituent research. Your volunteer host can speak to the motivations behind her bequest, and you can invite a discussion of how other guests can do likewise. You'll want to listen and note who expresses special interest, then follow up individually with them. When designing your print communications, consider all publications your nonprofit sends to constituents. Then piggyback your bequest messaging in those existing publications. You can write brief articles highlighting donors who've made gifts via bequest. You can shine a spotlight on your recognition society. You can regularly extend invitations for those interested in bequest gifts to contact your office. I encourage you to review publications from other nonprofits to borrow the best ideas for your own. Awareness and ultimately action come from frequent and continuous exposure to the value of planning a bequest. There needs to be constancy in your communication program. Here are some simple things you can do regularly. Make it a point to include some simple mention of your bequests program in all pertinent print materials. Invite both those interested and those who've already made bequests to contact you. Add checkoff boxes to annual fund pledge cards. Your messaging can be as simple as what you see on this slide. Consider a similar message for reply envelopes for other purposes in addition to your fundraising. Your simple printed message there might say, "Have you considered adding our nonprofit to your estate plan?" Consider adding a tagline to gift receipts on your letterhead and to email signatures, something like, "Create your legacy, join the Legacy Society." Your tagline should be succinct, 10 words at a maximum. Focus its message on the donor, include a call to action, and a web link to make it easy for readers to take that action. Write and print occasional donor stories, brief articles that highlight a donor who's made a gift via bequest. In each article, the donor can express what motivated the gift, briefly describe how it was done, then encourage others to do the same. You might even draft this for your donor's review. Include a photograph with the story to give it a warm, personal touch. There are 1 or 2 standalone printed pieces you'll want to consider. One is a piece that describes bequest gifts, explains their value to your organization, and lets donors know how bequest commitments are honored. Your version of what's generically called a will information kit. Samples abound for your reference. A second piece would be sample bequest language to share with donors and their attorneys. This could be a simple one-pager that could be produced in-house, maybe in a brochure. A generic brochure from one of the companies that specialize in these publications can be relatively inexpensive. A custom brochure tailored to your organization will be more expensive, but can still be kept relatively simple if your budget's limited. In this print piece, you can offer to work with bequest donors to draft their gift instructions, their wishes for their future gifts. If you offer to do this through a standalone gift agreement, you can remind your donor that having such instructions separate from the document that provides the bequest, especially if it's a bequest by will, can potentially save the donor any future legal expenses in the event the donor would like to adjust those instructions in the future. You may want to send mailings targeted to a specific constituent segment you've identified, reminding them about the importance of having a will and suggesting they consider including your organization in their estate plans. Your segmented groups can be large or small, thousands, dozens. Each mailing can be tailored to its intended audience. A letter to those who've been loyal and consistent donors for many years will be different, for example, than a letter to retired staff or one to those who've made prior gifts of cash or securities. Here are some examples of possible market segments. Older donors. Pick your age range according to your message. Those who've given consistently and over a long time period. Look for those who've given for at least 3 consecutive years. Look for both current and lapsed donors whose gift histories meet this criterion. Craft a message for retired staff or their surviving spouses. Create something for current and former board members and other key volunteers. Create a message for those with no heirs. You might choose, whether regularly or occasionally, to follow up your targeted mailings with telephone calls to invite questions and further conversation. For further details, see the attached article on a targeted direct mail program. Here are some ideas for your electronic marketing and promotion. Remember to mention your Bequests program in all e-versions of all your publications. Consider what you can add to your website that provides information for those interested in giving. Spend some time looking at the giving web pages of other nonprofits you believe do a good job and emulate their content. Gifts via Bequest and other ways to give should be featured on at least one page of your website. Ideally, the case for bequests can be made on a separate sub-page reached from the main development page or from a Ways to Give page. In addition, the bequest page could link to a separate page or a printable PDF file with sample bequest language. A visitor to your website should be able to find your nonprofit's legal name, your federal tax identification number, your mailing address, who to contact, and how to contact that office for more information. Analyze your donor database using pertinent criteria as they're available to you. Things like total number of gifts, length of giving history, consistency of giving, age, marital and family status, involvement with your nonprofit, etc. The most important group is the one that has been giving the longest and the most consistently. Statistically, the majority of estate gifts, specifically wills, are drawn between the ages of 75 and 85. This is a prime audience for gifts via bequest. A study conducted several years ago revealed that people who proactively include charitable bequests in their wills tend to do that at an earlier age, in their mid-40s. This gives you 2 constituent segments to pay special attention to. The younger are more likely to be better educated, successful professionals who tend to plan ahead. Those who are active in your nonprofit and who specifically are loyal, consistent donors should be flagged. Your message to them might be as simple as asking if your nonprofit is already named in their estate plans. The older segment might be approached with broader messaging, focusing on the overall benefits of having a will, then following up to encourage a charitable provision in that will. Bequest donors are 60 to 75% female, notably including the widows of men who directed gifts to charity during their lifetimes. Give yourself permission to add the names of others you know should be included due to leadership, to gift potential, their lifetime giving, etc. Using these and other criteria that make sense to you, create your list of those you'll regularly communicate with regarding gifts via bequest. Lead by example and make your own bequest. Then encourage your organization's key staff to do the same. See the attached sample identification and rating checklist for ideas on how you can do all this. You might build a planning partners network, including estate planning attorneys, trust officers, investment managers, and other allied planning professionals who work with individuals to plan their financial affairs. While there are restrictions on how directly they might recommend a particular nonprofit to their clients, the more they know of or about you, the more likely your nonprofit will be part of the conversations when it's appropriate. The purpose of your marketing and promotions program is to receive responses from those interested in your Bequests program. Follow up with those who request information, who express interest in making some special significant gift. Those who respond to your invitation and let you know your nonprofit is already in their estate plans deserve a thank you communication. It should ideally be delivered in person. Consider that the deferred gift may not be the only gift or the last gift this donor will make. Take advantage of the opportunities you create. Identify opportunities for contact and cultivation of those you pick from your constituent management system. Here are some good occasions for you to contact your selected constituents. Gift anniversary dates, birthdays, maybe based on the age ranges you've decided to pursue. Special events, including your stewardship program events. Plan to engage with your selected constituents at your identified events. Prepare your talking points for those meetings across the shrimp bowl, just as you would your talking points for a phone call. Consider the frequency of these contacts. It could be anywhere from annually to more often. It's your choice, but choose. Make your plan, then execute it. Here's an agenda you can suggest when you ask to meet with someone who lets you know your nonprofit is already in their estate plan. I want to thank you in person for your consideration. I'd like to discuss your desired gift purpose, draft your gift instructions so our organization will know what you intended when you established your gift. I'd like to request documentation of your bequest, and I want to describe our donor acknowledgement program. Those who express an interest in adding a charitable bequest to your nonprofit also deserve a face-to-face visit. Here's a suggested agenda to mention when you ask for a meeting with them. I want to thank you in person for your consideration. I'd like to discuss any desired gift purpose, to draft your gift instructions in case you decide to make a gift via bequest. I'd like to learn why you care enough about our nonprofit that you'd consider such a generous and far-sighted gift plan, and I want to describe our donor acknowledgement program to you. The most important thing, really the whole point of starting a Bequests program, is getting in front of those of your constituents who indicate an interest in making such a gift. And the key element of succeeding at this is to commit, absolutely without blinking, to making time to do it. Every month, every week, without fail. Ideally, this goal should be integrated into your overall major gift prospecting metrics. The CEO, the dean, the vice president with multiple balls to juggle, sometimes the development director with multiple balls to juggle, must include some time for major gift prospecting because that's where the big gifts are. So decide how much time you have, how many possible major donors, including both those with either outright or deferred gift potential, you will select to contact and pursue and manage. If your research identifies more names than you feel comfortable handling, committing to, then pare down your list. It's your list. I hope this look at what it takes to conduct a single face-to-face visit will help you figure out how many visits to set as your regular goal as you integrate this commitment into your overall time management plan. Whether you set a weekly or a monthly goal, nothing else you do will have a greater impact on your fundraising success as will putting yourself in front of your donors. Plan on 30 minutes making phone calls to secure one appointment. That will include leaving voice messages, speaking with gatekeepers, and negotiating meetings with your possible donors. You'll get better at this with practice. Budget 30 minutes prior to each visit to conduct research, collect pertinent materials, to plan for the visit. Schedule 2 hours for the visit, including travel time to and from, and that's only for local travel where you know the geography. Anticipate another hour post-visit for follow-up correspondence, for planning next steps, for internal coordination. That totals 4 hours per major gift appointment. It isn't sequential. You'll find yourself preparing, executing, and following up over a period of days prior to, during, and after each visit. How many such meetings will you commit to making every week? This is where all your preparation, all your communication, all your research pays off. Remember, the reason you decided to design a bequests program was to secure new bequests for your nonprofit, and that ultimately requires one-on-one communication. Thank you for buying this short lesson. I hope you picked up some ideas you can put to use as you create or expand your nonprofit's bequests program. You're welcome to contact me for a free 15-minute consultation on what you took away from the lesson and about how I might help you with your bequests program. If you'd like to learn more about charitable gift planning, including how you can successfully solicit both deferred and outright gifts of appreciated assets, contact me about my tutorial program in conversational gift planning.